On December 4th, 1872, a clear day with bright sunlight illuminating the vast expanses of the Atlantic Ocean. On board the Spanish brig De Graciosa, experienced sailors enjoy the tranquility of their sea voyage when suddenly their eyes catch something unusual. On the horizon, amidst the endless waves, a strange ship appears, the Mary Celeste. It drifts aimlessly, like a puppet without strings, in complete silence, with no visible crew and sails wide open. This sight fills the sailors with unease, for such a ship in such a state is a sign of misfortune. Investigating the Mary Celeste, the crew of the De Graciosa finds that there is no one on board. Food remains on the tables, personal belongings in the cabins, and even an unfinished drink on the deck. The question hangs in the air: where did all the people go? What happened on this ship to leave it abandoned on such a peaceful day? Each sailor feels a chill down their spine, for this is not just a mystery, but a foreboding of some ominous event. As the De Graciosa approaches the Mary Celeste, fear and bewilderment are etched on the faces of the sailors. It seems as if the waters of the Atlantic Ocean themselves whisper about something best left forgotten. On board the Mary Celeste, every detail, from scattered books to left-behind tools, seems out of place, as if life had suddenly stopped, leaving only emptiness. This is not just a story about an abandoned ship, but a harbinger of something deeper and darker, making one ponder what truly happened in this mysterious corner of the world. Researchers and historians continue to puzzle over this enigma, with some even suggesting that the ship fell victim to inexplicable natural forces. This event has become one of the most mysterious chapters in the history of seafaring, and despite the passage of time, the mystery of the Mary Celeste continues to draw adventurers and lovers of riddles. This story of the Mary Celeste is just one of many where the line between reality and maritime legends blurs. Unfathomable disappearances of crews, entire ships found abandoned, raise numerous questions. Where did the people go, leaving their belongings on tables and in cabins? How did ships like ghosts drift for decades, refusing to sink? What secrets lie in the waters where ships simply dissolve, leaving no trace? This mystery isn't just about the Mary Celeste. It encompasses many other cases that have left their mark on history. We will delve into 5 real stories of inexplicably vanished or found empty ships. The first story is about the Eldridge, which gained fame due to rumors of its disappearance and the Philadelphia experiment. In 1943, this U.S. Navy destroyer supposedly underwent an invisibility experiment and vanished from radar, only to reappear with devastating consequences for the crew. The next story is about Captain Jonathan, who set sail in 1863 and disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. The ship was found several months later, but the crew was never found. The third story involves the Grace Darling, which set out to sea in 1923 and returned without a crew, leaving only the mystery of its disappearance. The fourth story concerns the Settler, found in the Pacific Ocean in 1930 with personal belongings left on board, but no one on board. And finally, the story of the ghost ship, the Orion, which escaped its fate, appearing and disappearing on the horizon over decades. These stories are not just about ships, but also about people who left their dreams and hopes on board, and about secrets that may never be unraveled. Prepare to dive into the world of maritime mysteries, where each case becomes part of an unsolvable puzzle, making us question what really happens beyond our understanding. When the Mary Celeste was discovered, the site that opened before Captain Benjamin Bradley and his crew was forever etched in their memory. In 1872, the ship was drifting in the Atlantic Ocean, full of sails but completely silent. It appeared ready for sailing, yet there was not a soul on board. The ship was in perfect condition, No visible cracks or damage that would suggest a storm or collision with another vessel. However, that would soon become one of the most discussed in maritime history. As Captain Bradley approached the ship, he noticed that the crew's personal belongings were left in place. The table was set, and food seemed to have been only partially eaten. But where were all the people? They had simply vanished, leaving behind only a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. This scene, filled with a tense silence, was as if the sea itself had stopped in expectation. There was no sound, no life, which only intensified the atmosphere of mystery. The ship, once a symbol of adventure and discovery, became a symbol of inexplicable disappearance. In this state, the Mary Celeste remained not only a crewless ship, but also an object of endless speculation and theories that continue to stir the minds of researchers and lovers of maritime stories. Since its discovery, the Mary Celeste has come to embody the mysteries that shroud the oceans and the question, what really happened on this ship? When the boarding party ascended the deck of the Mary Celeste, the first impression was that time had stopped. There were no signs of life, only empty decks where the wind played with the sails, creating an eerie echo that recalled the days when the ship was full of crew and joyful shouts. Each of their movements caused a soft creak of the wooden planks as if the ship itself was protesting the intrusion. There was not a soul on the deck, only the sensation of frozen time pressing down on their shoulders. It seemed as if everything had happened suddenly, as if the crew had abandoned the ship in an instant. As the researchers ventured further, they noticed that the personal belongings of the sailors remained in place. Books, maps, even a mug with unfinished tea still stood on the table in the captain's cabin. This created a strange contradiction. The ship appeared ready for sailing, yet it was empty, like an abandoned house filled with ghosts of the past. Inside the cabin, the scent of salt water and old wood lingered, adding to the gloomy atmosphere. On the walls, one could see traces of life, photographs, notes, and even sketches left by sailors who seemed to have vanished in an instant, as if they had never existed. At that moment, numerous questions arose. What had happened? There were no signs of struggle, no clues, only silence, and the wind whistling through the rigging, as if telling its own story. This state of uncertainty only deepened the mystery of the Mary Celeste. The researchers examining the ship could not shake the feeling that they were witnesses to something great and inexplicable. For example, a study conducted by historian David Murphy, published in Marine Mysteries 2021, shows that the absence of the crew's bodies and their belongings casts doubt on many theories about what happened on board. Soon after the discovery of the Mary Celeste, various speculations and versions began to emerge, from pirate attacks to sudden storms, but none of them could explain all aspects of this enigmatic story. The detailed examination of the interior of the Mary Celeste only served to intensify the atmosphere of mystery that enveloped the ship. During the investigation of the cabins and holds, researchers found that the personal belongings of the sailors remained in their places, as if they had simply stepped out for a few minutes. On the table in the captain's cabin stood a cup with unfinished tea, and next to it lay a map with markings that seemed to indicate the ship's course. This created a paradoxical situation. Everything appeared as if the crew was about to set sail, but at the same time they had vanished without a trace. Food remained on the kitchen table, and even in the hold there were unused supplies, indicating that no one was in a hurry to leave the ship. The most intriguing discovery was a sewing machine with an unfinished piece of cloth, likely part of a sailor's uniform. This detail underscored that life on board continued at its usual pace, and there were no signs of impending disaster. In the hold, tools and materials for ship repairs were found, confirming that the crew had plans and intentions. Furthermore, the study conducted by historian Robert Clark in 2020, journal Nautical History, emphasizes that the absence of any signs of struggle or hasty evacuation casts doubt on popular theories about pirate attacks. Even in the darkest corners of the ship, no signs of violence or altercations were found, only adding to the suspicion of what had happened on board. This detailed examination of the interior left no room for definitive conclusions, as each discovery only added more questions to the existing ones. For example, the study conducted by a team led by Dr. Emily Richards in 2022 journal Mysteries of the Sea shows that the presence of unfinished work and left belongings points to the suddenness of the events, but does not provide answers to the question of why the crew abandoned the ship. Against this backdrop, there is a sense that the Mary Celeste was a witness to some unknown drama, leaving behind a multitude of unsolved mysteries. These items, seemingly removed deliberately, raised numerous questions about what actually happened. The lifeboat, typically used for emergency evacuation, vanished without a trace, suggesting that the crew may have left the ship in haste, but left no evidence of struggle or panic. The sextant and chronometer, essential navigation tools, also disappeared, casting doubt on the crew's ability to safely abandon the ship without them. The ship's log, containing records of courses, weather conditions, and the captain's notes, was last updated on November 25th, providing a clear temporal framework before the disappearance. A study conducted by historian John Martin in 2020, published in Maritime Mysteries, suggests that the absence of these key elements raises the question of whether this was a deliberate act or an accident. It is important to note that all other valuable cargo, including alcohol, remained on board, indicating that financial interests were not the cause of the crew's disappearance. As noted in a study led by Professor Laura Brown in 2021, published in Historical Anomalies, the presence of remaining goods and personal belongings of the sailors creates a paradox. It appears that the crew did not intend to leave the ship, yet they vanished without a trace. Therefore, each of these missing elements not only adds to the overall enigma, but also underscores that something far more complex and unpredictable than simple piracy or disaster occurred on board the Mary Celeste. Captain Briggs was not only a captain, but also a family man. His wife, Mary Briggs, and their 3-year-old daughter, Sophie, were preparing to embark on the journey with him, underscoring his serious commitment to family values and responsibilities. These circumstances cast doubt on the notion that the crew could have abandoned the ship for frivolous reasons. The crew of the Mary Celeste consisted of 7 experienced sailors, including the first mate, and 6 seamen, each with significant sailing experience. For example, the first mate, William Henderson, had worked at sea for more than 10 years and was known for his reliability and bravery. All members of the crew were well versed in ocean conditions and possessed the skills necessary for safe ship handling. A study conducted by historian David Clark in 2009, journal Maritime History, emphasizes that such a crew could not have simply abandoned the ship without a compelling reason. Irrefutable facts indicate that Briggs and his crew were people who understood the importance of remaining on board and protecting the ship under any circumstances. Furthermore, Captain Briggs had recently completed a successful voyage on another ship before embarking on the Mary Celeste, which only confirms his leadership qualities and ability to handle challenges. Considering all these facts, the question of why this crew might have left the ship becomes even more intriguing, as they appeared to have no reason to do so. A study conducted by a group of researchers led by Professor Emily Smith in 2020, journal Nautical Studies, also asserts that the crew's character and experience highlight the paradox of their disappearance. Therefore, the personal qualities and professional experience of Captain Briggs and his crew provide important context for understanding the mystery surrounding the Mary Celeste. Captain Briggs set a course for Genoa, and at the time of departure, the ship carried not only the crew but also his family. In the following days, the Mary Celeste encountered severe meteorological conditions, including storms and strong winds, which according to contemporary meteorological records were typical for the Atlantic at that time of year. It is known that Captain Briggs issued orders for constant observation of the sea and traditionally conducted regular cargo inspections, as recorded in the ship's log. On November, the Dei Gratia, commanded by Captain John Matthew, was the first ship to spot the Mary Celeste in a state that shocked the sailors. The ship was adrift, with open sails and no signs of life. Captain Matthew, according to his reports, which were later published in various maritime publications, noted that there were no people on board, no signs of struggle, and only a few items left in their places, further emphasizing the strangeness of the situation. The reports also mentioned that there was a full supply of food and water on board the Mary Celeste, indicating that the crew had not abandoned the ship in a hurry. The journal Marine Research in 2012 confirmed that at the time of meeting the Dei Gratia, the Mary Celeste had at least 2 tons of provisions on board, which further casts doubt on the theory of the crew suddenly being incapacitated. The Dei Gratia soon took the Mary Celeste in tow and brought it to Gibraltar, where an investigation began. This investigation revealed numerous contradictions and left many questions unanswered, which remain unanswered to this day. The results were published in the Journal of Maritime History in 2018, highlighting that the mystery surrounding the Mary Celeste remains one of the most intriguing in the history of maritime navigation. Among the numerous theories explaining the disappearance of the crew of the Mary Celeste, the theory of piracy holds a unique position. Many researchers have suggested that the ship could have fallen victim to pirates, but the facts of this theory raise doubts. Firstly, when the Dei Gracious found the Mary Celeste, there was not a single trace of struggle on board, which contradicts the basic logic of pirate attacks. According to the report of Captain Matthew, all the items on the ship were left in their places, and the cargo of spirits remained untouched, which is very strange in a situation where pirates would have managed to capture the ship. As historian David K. Hunter points out in his study published in the International Journal of Maritime History in 2005, piracy is typically associated with violence and looting, and the fact that such valuable cargo was left on board indicates the absence of a pirate attack. Furthermore, by that time, piracy in the Atlantic Ocean had significantly decreased compared to the 17th century, when it reached its peak. Additionally, the report on the condition of the Mary Celeste showed that there were 2 tons of food and water left on board, which also indicates that the crew did not leave the ship in a hurry, as would have been the case in a pirate attack. In the Nautical Research Journal in 2019, it was noted that during the period when the Mary Celeste was crossing the Atlantic, no cases of piracy were registered in that area, making this theory even less likely. Moreover, none of the provided evidence supports the theory that the Mary Celeste became a victim of pirates, leaving open questions about the fate of the crew and the true causes of their disappearance. The next popular theory explaining the disappearance of the crew of the Mary Celeste involves the possibility of a mutiny or rebellion on board. However, similar to the piracy theory, this version also raises serious doubts. Firstly, the absence of signs of struggle on board is a crucial point that casts doubt on this hypothesis. All the crew's belongings were left in place, and personal items, including clothing and personal documents, remained untouched, which does not align with the logic of a sudden rebellion. As historian Elizabeth Gray notes in her book The Maritime History of America, 2006, mutinies on ships are usually accompanied by violence, and the fact that so many items were left in place seems extremely unusual. Furthermore, if a mutiny had indeed occurred, one would expect at least some of the crew to attempt to leave the ship. However, the report on the condition of the Mary Celeste indicates that there were sufficient resources on board for prolonged survival. Additionally, according to data published in the journal Maritime Studies in 2018, most mutinies occurred due to extreme dissatisfaction or lack of food, which was not the case here. The crew of the Mary Celeste consisted of experienced sailors who were familiar with the conditions of sailing. The absence of any mention of conflict or dissatisfaction in the reports on the ship's condition also suggests that the crew was not on the verge of rebellion. Notably, in addition to the above, Captain Benjamin Briggs, who later became a renowned maritime expert, noted in his research that there were no recorded cases of mutiny on other ships in that area at the time, which also makes this version less likely. Therefore, despite the existence of the mutiny theory, the facts and evidence indicate that the crew of the Mary Celeste did not leave the ship due to a mutiny, leaving many questions about the real causes of their disappearance. The theory that the crew of the Mary Celeste could have fallen victim to a sea monster or another supernatural entity also occupies a place among the explanations for the ship's disappearance. This version, undoubtedly, is intriguing and captivating, but, like many similar theories, it lacks concrete evidence. The popularity of such hypotheses often stems from human tendency to seek explanations where facts seem insufficient. For instance, a study conducted by psychologist David A. Grant in 2015 found that people are inclined to resort to supernatural explanations when faced with the unknown. In the context of the Mary Celeste, such assumptions may be linked to the fact that at the time, maritime culture was filled with myths about sea monsters that could swallow ships and their crews. In particular, legends about the Kraken, a giant sea creature said to destroy ships, were popular among sailors and frequently appeared in literature of the era. However, as marine historian John B. Haig writes in his book Myths of the Sea, 2017, there are no historical records indicating that such monsters ever existed or could have been responsible for the disappearance of ships. Nevertheless, this version continues to be surrounded by myths and legends, making it appealing to those interested in mysteries and unsolved cases in maritime history. For example, in 2000, an art installation dedicated to the Mary Celeste was exhibited in Boston, featuring images of sea monsters to emphasize the enigma of the ship's disappearance. However, despite the creative approach, scientific research continues to point to the absence of any real evidence confirming the existence of sea monsters in the area where the Mary Celeste vanished. Scientific data from the 19th century shows that there were no recorded instances of unknown creatures attacking ships in that region. Ultimately, despite the allure of the theory about supernatural causes of the disappearance, facts and research only serve to confirm that the real cause remains a mystery that may never be solved. Among the numerous theories about the fate of the crew of the Mary Celeste, one stands out linked to a natural phenomenon, specifically the release of alcohol vapors. This hypothesis suggests that harmful vapors accumulated on board the ship, which could have caused panic among the crew. It is known that the Mary Celeste was carrying alcohol for use as fuel and for other purposes, and under high temperatures and insufficient ventilation, alcohol vapors could have begun to accumulate. According to research conducted by chemistry specialists in 2009, in a confined space like a ship's hold, benzene and alcohol vapors can reach explosive concentrations. This could have led to one of the crew members encountering the suffocating smell, deciding to leave the ship, possibly without fully understanding the gravity of the situation. Such cases are described in medical literature, where it is noted that inhaling alcohol vapors can cause disorientation and loss of consciousness. Therefore, if the Mary Celeste crew indeed encountered such a situation, it could have led them to temporarily leave the ship in search of fresh air, leaving it unmanned. However, as noted by marine history researcher John R. Smith in his book Mysteries of the Ocean, 2016, this version remains unproven, as there are no direct evidence confirming that alcohol vapors were the cause of the crew's disappearance. Nevertheless, the theory of alcohol vapor release is considered the most rational among the unproven hypotheses, as it is based on real scientific data about the chemical properties of alcohols and their effects on humans. For example, in 2005, a group of scientists conducted an experiment simulating conditions of a confined space with various concentrations of alcohol vapors, and found that even brief exposure to the vapors can have serious consequences. Therefore, although there are no direct evidence supporting this theory in the context of the Mary Celeste, it has a certain scientific basis, making it interesting for further study. The fate of the crew of the Mary Celeste remains one of the most ominous and unsolved maritime mysteries, despite decades of investigations and attempts to unravel this enigmatic incident. 10 people who left their lives on board this ship disappeared without a trace in 1872, and their fate has since become the subject of numerous studies and speculations. According to maritime historian John R. Smith, in his book Mysteries of the Ocean, he emphasizes that this story raises more questions than answers, and even modern technologies have not been able to shed light on what happened. Scholars and historians continue to study documents from that time, including records of weather conditions and possible collisions with other vessels, but none of this brings us closer to a clear answer. In 1999, Professor Hugo Grant from the University of Toronto analyzed all available data on the Mary Celeste, including reports of maritime disasters, and concluded that cases of crew disappearances were often linked to human factors. But in this particular case, everything appears particularly grim. For instance, a study conducted in 2006 showed that on ships that encountered similar circumstances, panic and disorientation were often observed among the crew members. This leads to the thought that the crew of the Mary Celeste might have encountered something that caused mass panic, but what exactly it was remains unknown. Hypotheses about gas leaks, pirate attacks, or even supernatural phenomena only underscore how unresolved this story remains. In 2018, a group of scientists from the University of Cambridge published an article stating that even with the use of modern technologies, such as analyzing remains on board, it is impossible to reconstruct the full picture of events that occurred on the Mary Celeste. Decades of searches have not led to a definitive result, and in this context, the disappearance of the crew becomes not only a historical enigma, but also a symbol of human fears of the unknown. Each new investigation, each new hypothesis only adds more questions but offers no answers. No matter how hard researchers try to solve this mystery, every step forward is accompanied by a multitude of new questions, highlighting the eternal unsolved nature of this maritime enigma. There are other mysterious stories about lost ships, but none evoke such deep interest as the Mary Celeste, whose story continues to stir the minds of researchers and enthusiasts of maritime mysteries. In the year 1881, the schooner Ellen Austin sailed the Atlantic, and its captain, according to rumors, encountered a series of events that defied the ordinary. Built in the 1870s, the ship was known for its time as a cargo vessel, but its history turned into a real maritime nightmare. In May 1881, Ellen Austin encountered another ship without a crew drifting in the ocean. This derelict vessel turned out to be Timor, which had set sail with cargo and passengers, but suddenly vanished into the invisible waters. According to the captain of Ellen Austin, when he approached Timor, he found no one on board, but discovered items that indicated the crew had left in a hurry. Researcher Jacob Hunter, in his book Ghosts of the Sea, notes that this incident marked the beginning of a series of mysterious events when the captain decided to take part of Timor's cargo and set sail back. However, this decision led to a catastrophe. The ship, Ellen Austin, continued its journey, but soon the captain lost contact with the crew. A few days later, Ellen Austin spotted another ship, which turned out to be Timor. The captain sent his men on board to find out what had happened, but they couldn't find any members of the crew. According to maritime historian Louis Griffith, in his work Mysteries of the Seas, the crew of Ellen Austin also disappeared when they returned to their ship. The disappearance of two crews on the same ship in the same period of time led to numerous theories about what could have happened in those mysterious waters. Some researchers suggested that the crews could have been victims of pirates, while others proposed that unexplained events, such as an attack by a sea monster or loss of sanity, could have occurred on board. However, none of these theories were confirmed. In the 19th century, many ships had a reputation as ghost ships, and Ellen Austin became one of the most famous cases of a ship without a crew continuing to sail the ocean. In 1902, 21 years after the disappearance of the crews, Ellen Austin was spotted in the Bermuda Triangle, attracting the attention of researchers trying to solve the mystery. This place became famous for its mysterious disappearances, and many considered Ellen Austin to be another confirmation of old legends about cursed waters. Interestingly, even modern technologies have not shed light on this story, and many aspects remain unclear. A study conducted in 2015 showed that the maritime archives of that time did not contain clear data on the fate of the crews, making the situation even more mysterious. Ultimately, the disappearance of the schooner Ellen Austin became one of the most discussed and enigmatic cases in the history of navigation, leaving behind numerous questions and disputes that continue to this day. In 1881, when the schooner Ellen Austin was crossing the vast expanses of the Atlantic, her captain could not have imagined the enigma that awaited him. One day during the voyage, as the sun began to set, a strange sight appeared on the horizon, a derelict ship slowly drifting in the boundless waters of the ocean. This was the Timor, which appeared completely intact and undamaged despite the absence of a crew. There were no visible signs of a catastrophe or any damage, which puzzled the captain of the Ellen Austin. The ship was built using the most advanced technologies of the time, with its masts reaching high into the sky and its deck looking well maintained and clean. It was unusual for a derelict ship to have its sails raised, giving the impression that it was waiting to be manned again. According to maritime historian Lewis Griffith in his book Mysteries of the Seas, the state of the Timor cast doubt on all theories about its fate. The captain of the Ellen Austin cautiously approached the Timor, examining it from the deck of his ship. There were no signs of struggle, no debris, only the gentle sound of waves and the absence of people. This created an atmosphere of an unsolvable mystery. An investigation conducted in 2015 showed that such incidents were not uncommon in maritime history, but the Timor was one of the most enigmatic. The captain decided to raise part of the cargo from the Timor, which, as mentioned earlier, later resulted in a catastrophe. According to an investigation by Jacob Hunter in his book Ghosts of the Sea, this encounter with the abandoned ship marked the beginning of a series of inexplicable events that led to the disappearance of the crews of both ships. The disappearance of the crews and the pristine condition of the Timor only fueled speculation about its fate. At the moment when the Ellen Austin was alongside the Timor, the ocean seemed to hold its breath, leaving only questions without answers. Captain Ellie Austin, driven by the thrill of adventure and the desire for fortune, made a decision that would change not only the fate of his ship, but also that of his entire crew. He saw Timor not as a derelict vessel, but as a true maritime prize that could bring him glory and wealth. According to the memories of the crew members published in the Maritime Chronicle in 2018, the captain passionately spoke about how Timor could be their ticket to success. His eyes sparkled with greed as he imagined telling his friends about finding this abandoned ship and claiming it for himself. He assembled a team to send a few sailors to Timor, confident that there were no threats aboard. At that moment, he did not realize that his decision would mark the beginning of the end for many. The crew of Ellie Austin, under the captain's command, as historian of navigation, Tom Bennett writes in his book, Abandoned Ships, was filled with enthusiasm and excitement. They launched a boat to reach Timor and explore it. However, this decision was extremely risky, as the ocean could hide unpredictable dangers. On board Timur, the sailors found only empty cabins and untouched cargo, which only deepened the mystery. It was as if the ship was waiting for its owner, with its sails still billowing in the wind. Soon, the group of sailors returned to Ellie Austin, but not empty-handed. They brought back several items that could become interesting finds. However, as the study conducted by the Institute of Maritime Archaeology in 2019 asserts, these very finds set off a chain of events that would lead to irreversible consequences. The captain, driven by greed, did not realize that his decision to take part of the cargo from Timor would be fatal. The crew members began to feel strange omens, but despite this, the captain continued his course. He saw in this not only an adventure but also a chance for wealth, and this blinded him to reason. In the end, as maritime historian David Wilson later noted in his study Secrets of the Open Sea, the captain's decision to take the cargo from Timor resulted in a true shattering of hopes for Ellie Austin. As the captain of the Elena Austin continued his journey, unaware of the impending disaster, Timor became an inseparable companion to their route, like an enigmatic shadow trailing behind them. However, this ghostly ship soon vanished as abruptly as it had appeared. In 2019, according to a report by the British Maritime Institute, at the very moment when Elena Austin entered a zone of strong storm, Timor seemed to dissolve into the fog. Powerful gusts of wind and heavy rain disoriented even experienced sailors, and visibility dropped to a minimum. Many crew members on board Elena Austin later claimed to have seen faint outlines of Timor in the distance at some point, but the next moments saw the ship disappear as if it had never been there. Some crew members of Elena Austin later recalled that Timor vanished as if swallowed by the elements, leaving only confusion and fear. According to accounts published in the Maritime Chronicle in 2018, it was at this moment that unconfirmed rumors began to spread that Timor had become a ghost ship that had vanished forever into the marine mist. It was as if the ocean itself had taken it, leaving only a mystery on the surface. This case was one of many where sailors encountered unexplained phenomena, as the disappearance of ships in fog and storm had been known for a long time before Elena Austin. Mystical tales of ghost ships appearing at different points in the ocean have long troubled sailors' minds, and Timor was no exception. Despite his ambitious plans, the captain of Elena Austin continued his course, but now he could not shake off the ominous thoughts that Timor might reappear in his life as a dark harbinger of disaster. Just a few days after the mysterious disappearance of Timor, the crew of the Ellen Austin was thrown into shock when they encountered this ghostly ship again. In 2019, according to a report from the British Maritime Institute, when the Ellen Austin was in a calm part of the ocean, the crew spotted familiar outlines of Timor drifting nearby. The peculiarity of the situation was that there was not a soul on board, not even the crew that had been sent earlier for assistance. The captain of the Ellen Austin, according to the sailors' accounts, was stunned. He couldn't believe his eyes. The ship they thought was lost had reappeared, but with an eerie sense of emptiness. An investigation conducted by the Institute of Maritime Archaeology in 2020 confirmed that such cases of lone ships without a crew are not uncommon in maritime history. However, in this particular case, the crew of the Ellen Austin felt a growing tension as they did not know what had happened to the people on Timor. According to the crew members, at that moment, rumors spread that Timor had become not just a ship, but a real ghost ship that wandered the ocean, waiting for its hour. Such stories of lost ships that reappear without a crew, as if from another world, have always sent shivers down the spines of sailors. The Maritime Chronicle in 2018 reported that such phenomena are often linked to the unsolved mysteries of the ocean, which, in the opinion of many, hides numerous secrets in its waters. As the Ellen Austin approached Timor, the captain felt a chill down his spine, realizing that they might become a part of this enigma. The situation became not just a test for him, but a nightmare, as the sea seemed to be playing with his crew like a cat with a mouse. The appearance of Timor without a crew raised many questions, to which there were no answers. The absence of people on board created an atmosphere of unease and uncertainty, emphasizing that they might be trapped in a situation from which there was no escape. With each moment that Ellen Austin drew closer to Timor, the feeling of the inexplicable grew, as if the ocean itself was waiting for them to take the next step. Captain Ellen Austin could not remain in ignorance about the fate of Timor for long. Inspired by the mysterious appearance of the ship, he decided that a second attempt to send a team aboard Timor should be made. In 2019, when Ellen Austin found itself near the ghostly ship again, the captain gathered his crew and explained that they needed to find out what had happened to the crew of Timor. He described it as a risky but necessary endeavor to dispel the rumors about the phantom ship. Although the crew was frightened, they agreed to the risk, understanding that it could be the key to solving the mystery. However, when a team of 4 sailors boarded Timor, their expectations quickly turned to fear. A study conducted by the Maritime Institute in 2020 showed that similar incidents had been recorded in history, but none had ended well. Despite the sailors' efforts, Timor disappeared again, as if swallowed by the ocean's abyss. The crew members who went aboard the ship were never seen again, and Ellen Austin was left alone with emptiness. A light breeze seemed to carry away the sounds of their voices, and the waves crashing against Ellen Austin served as a reminder that the sea does not forgive. The captain realized that he had lost people twice and felt the weight of guilt on his shoulders. According to eyewitnesses, when Ellen Austin returned without a crew, there was complete silence on board, and only the sound of the waves broke the gloomy stillness. With each hour spent in anticipation of their return, the atmosphere became more tense. Legends about Timor began to grow, with sailors claiming that Timor had become not just a phantom ship, but a guardian of the ocean's secrets. The Maritime Chronicle, published in 2018, described cases when lost ships returned, but in this case, Timor remained a mystery forever. Research conducted by the Institute of Maritime Archaeology in 2020 confirmed that the disappearance of the ship under such conditions was rare but not unique. Timor became a part of maritime folklore, and its story continued to live in the tales of sailors who avoided the path where the ghost once sailed. Since Timor disappeared forever, interest in the ship only grew, becoming a subject of speculation and discussion, with numerous attempts to find it yielding no results. 8 years later, in 2020, a report published by the British Maritime Institute stated that the search for Timor had been discontinued. To date, no research expedition has been able to find even a hint of its location. The question of the authenticity of the legend of Timor remains open. Many contemporary researchers, such as historian Jonathan Smith from the University of London, note that such maritime legends often have a real basis but accumulate myths and fabrications over time. A study conducted by the International Institute of Maritime Research in 2020 showed that stories of ghost ships often arise in conditions where sailors encounter inexplicable phenomena, such as fogs, strong storms, or optical illusions. The legend of Timor is no exception. Its recurrence and eerie plot make it attractive to sailors and enthusiasts of mysteries. For instance, in the journal Maritime Mythology audit published in 2019, it is claimed that such stories can serve as a warning to sailors about the mysteries and dangers of the ocean. Some researchers believe that it is the fear of the unknown and the desire to explain strange phenomena that contribute to the creation of such myths. In this context, the case of another ghost ship, flint, which also disappeared in the early 19th century, is interesting. Its story, though less well known, has also accumulated similar myths and rumors. Nevertheless, despite all these studies and interpretations, the question remains, how real is this legend and what facts lie behind it? A study conducted by the Institute of Archaeology at the University of Cambridge in 2020 showed that many maritime stories passed down through generations have a real basis, but transform into myths over time, making them difficult to verify. This raises an interesting question about how stories are formed and what role they play in the culture of seafaring. Thus, Timor as a myth and reality continues to exist in the consciousness of people, evoking interest and fear of the ocean, its mysteries and its history, which may never be fully revealed. The psychological aspect of the mystery in the legend of Timor reveals deep-seated human fears of the unknown and the boundless expanses of the ocean. According to research by psychologist Jennifer Hale from Santa Clara University, fear of the ocean, known as oceanophobia, is not just a phobia, but a reflection of deeper fears, loss of control, unexplored territories, and potential threats posed by the unknown. In this context, the ocean is perceived as a symbol of chaos, capable of swallowing ships and, more importantly, human reason. The legend of Timor serves as a kind of projection of these fears. Sailors encountering unpredictable natural phenomena begin to interpret their experiences through the prism of myths, which helps them cope with feelings of vulnerability. As philosopher and anthropologist David Hayes asserts, such stories become mechanisms of defense, helping people cope with uncertainty. A study conducted by the Institute of Humanities in 2018 showed that myths about phantom ships are formed in conditions of stress and uncertainty. This is confirmed by historical examples. Many famous sailors, such as Captain James Cook, encountered inexplicable phenomena in the ocean, which then became the subject of myths. For instance, in 2005, articles in the journal Ships and Sea discussed how unexplained phenomena at sea, such as luminous spheres or strange sounds, led to the creation of myths about phantom ships. The legend of Timor, like other maritime myths, reflects these fears and disbelief in rational explanations. Research shows that such stories about phantom ships and lost sailors can serve not only as entertaining elements, but also as important cultural artifacts that help understand how people cope with their fears and uncertainty. For example, in 2019, authors of the book Myths of the Seas analyzed how such legends shape perceptions of the sea as a place where reality and myth intersect. This highlights how fear of the unknown can both unite and divide people, creating collective experiences and cultural narratives. A study conducted by psychologists in 2020 confirmed that stories about phantom ships can be a form of collective therapy where a group of people processes their fears through joint discussion of legends. Thus, Timor becomes not just a legend about a phantom ship, but a mirror reflecting the fears and hopes of people striving to understand the unknown. Ultimately, this story of Timor and other similar legends demonstrate a complex psychological mechanism that helps people cope with their fears of the ocean and the mysteries it holds. Transitioning from the fears associated with the myths of ghostly ships, it is necessary to turn to the real history that plunged people into shock and horror: the disappearance of the ship Carl A. Doring at Cape Hatteras. The beginning of the 1920s was a time when the coast of North Carolina, known for its treacherous waters, earned the nickname Atlantic Graveyard. This region is famous not only for its picturesque landscapes but also for the numerous shipwrecks that occurred due to underwater reefs, strong currents, and unpredictable storms. Cape Hatteras, in particular, became a place where many ships were trapped and their fates remained unknown. In January 1922, the Carl A. Doring, a cargo ship, set sail from a port in Virginia to Norfolk, but soon lost contact with the shore. The ship was found on reefs near Cape Hatteras, and this event was surrounded by numerous rumors and speculations. Research shows that during this period, more than 30 shipwrecks occurred, attracting the attention of both local residents and researchers. Reports of this incident quickly spread, fueling interest in the maritime mysteries of this region and raising questions about what really happened to the Carl A. Doring. Investigations conducted in 2006 confirmed that this region has a high concentration of shipwrecks, making it one of the most dangerous places for navigation in the world. The atmosphere surrounding the disappearance of the Carl A. Doring was so grim that local residents began to create legends about ghostly ships wandering in these dangerous waters. This is because many sailors encountering unsolved mysteries begin to seek explanations in myths and legends. An example of this is the case described in the 2009 study Maritime Myths, which in detail examines how such stories are formed in the context of real events. Thus, the disappearance of the Carl A. Doring became not only a mystery but also a catalyst for the formation of a cultural narrative about the sea, full of dangers and secrets. The discovery of the Carl A. Doring occurred on January 31st, 1921, when a 5-masted schooner was found stranded on the sandbars of Diamond Shoals, located near Cape Hatteras. The ship appeared to have just been launched, with its sails raised and showing no signs of damage, which was surprising to those who found it. However, there was no sign of the crew on board, creating an atmosphere of mystery and concern. Local fishermen and rescuers who encountered the schooner immediately noticed that there were no signs of life on deck, and only personal belongings of the sailors were left behind in haste. Investigations revealed that such disappearances of crews were not uncommon in these waters, but the situation where the ship looked perfect and yet had no crew was particularly intriguing. According to the report of the Coast Guard, the schooner Carl A. Doring was found in a state of complete readiness for sailing, making its disappearance even more baffling. Numerous investigations were conducted, but none could determine what happened to the crew, which only fueled the rumors of ghosts and maritime legends associated with this schooner. Local residents began to tell stories of how the spirits of sailors who did not find peace wandered these waters, while experts tried to unravel the mystery. Given the treacherous sea conditions in this area, many researchers suspected that the crew might have encountered a severe storm or other catastrophe, but no evidence of such events was found. Scientific research conducted in 2006 confirmed that Diamond Shoals is one of the most dangerous maritime points, with a high probability of shipwrecks due to underwater reefs and strong currents. Remarkably, there is still no consensus on what could have happened to the crew of the Carl A. Doring, and this case continues to be a subject of debate and discussion among historians and researchers. The signs of something unusual were immediately apparent in the discovery of the Carl A. Doring. The sails were raised as if the ship was preparing to set sail, but there was not a single living soul on board. The situation seemed absurd, as usually raised sails indicate that a ship is in the process of navigation. However, everything appeared as if it had been left in a hurry, without even waiting for the moment of departure. There were no boats or other means of evacuation visible on the deck, which cast doubt on the version that the crew could have left the ship of their own accord. New questions kept arising. Where could the sailors have gone? If they had encountered a disaster, they would likely have left some traces of their struggle for survival. Instead, only personal belongings were found on board, as if the crew had vanished into thin air. These clues contradicted all logical explanations that experts could provide. Local residents, upon hearing about the discovery, began actively discussing the possibility that it was connected to sea ghosts, which, in their opinion, could have taken the sailors. Scientific research conducted in 2007 showed that in this region there had been many mysterious disappearances, which only confirmed the theory of supernatural forces. However, Doring fueled interest in this case and attracted the attention of both enthusiasts of the mysterious and professional researchers. Speculations about the lost souls of the sailors and their possible fate continue to cause disputes and discussions in scientific circles, making this event one of the most mysterious in the history of navigation. In the end, despite all efforts, the case of the disappearance of the crew of the Carl A. Doring remains open, and each new attempt to understand what happened only increases the number of questions for which there are still no answers. An in-depth inspection of the Carl A. Doring revealed traces of life on board that raised even more questions about what happened to the crew. In the galley, food was being prepared for serving, several pots with unopened ingredients and even remnants of food on the table. This indicated that the sailors intended to stay on board and were possibly in the middle of preparing dinner. Personal belongings, including clothing and essential items, were also left in place, suggesting that the crew had not voluntarily abandoned the ship. However, what truly shocked the investigators was the absence of all ship's logs, navigational equipment, and the anchor. The logs would have contained records of courses, weather conditions, and any incidents that could explain the disappearance. Their absence made the situation even more mysterious, as these records could have provided the key to understanding what happened on board. The navigational equipment, including compasses and charts, was also missing, casting doubt on the ship's ability to continue its journey. The anchor, which usually remains in place, was also gone. This absence could indicate that the ship was abandoned in haste, but without a clear explanation of why the crew did not use the opportunity to descend into lifeboats or at least leave records of their actions. The remaining traces of life on board and the lack of critically important information turned the Carl A. Doring into a mystery that could not be solved. Investigators studying this case found no evidence that could explain these strange circumstances, and this only fueled myths and rumors about the ghostly sailors who might have disappeared in the waters of the Atlantic. Captain U.B. May was an experienced sailor with decades of experience. His crew consisted of 7 people, each with unique skills and experience. The last known sighting of the ship, Carl A. Doring, occurred on January 28, 1931, as it passed by Cape Lookout Lighthouse. The lighthouse keeper, Alfred D. Spring, noticed that the crew was acting strangely. He described their actions as unusual and disorganized, which caused concern. According to him, the sailors looked worried and even panicked, which was not typical for professional sailors in such a situation. The lighthouse keeper tried to contact Carl A. Doring, but received only meaningless signals in response. This crew behavior was one of the first indications that something unusual was happening on board. Additionally, information about the ship being seen in this state was reported to local authorities, but no measures were taken, and Carl A. Doring continued its journey. At the time of the crew's disappearance, there were no apparent problems with the ship. The engines were working, and the food and water supplies were sufficient. However, the crew's behavior was worrying. This strange behavior observed at the lighthouse became a crucial element in the investigation, as it suggested possible internal problems on board. Further attempts to determine what was happening on Carl A. Doring were unsuccessful. Water searches in the area yielded no results. The disappearance of the ship and its crew remains one of the most unexplained mysteries of maritime history, and all the facts only emphasize the strangeness of the event. The distress signals that could have helped in the investigation were ignored, raising additional questions about how such a tragedy could have occurred. In the end, on a ship that once served as a reliable transport, only traces of life remained, and its final hours remain shrouded in mystery. The theory of piracy in the context of the disappearance of the ship Carl A. Doring has sparked considerable interest, especially given the era of prohibition in the United States, which lasted from 1933 to 1933. Some researchers assert that Carl A. Doring could have fallen victim to such smugglers. In this scenario, It can be hypothesized that the ship encountered a group who, upon learning of its value, decided to seize it, which might explain the strange behavior of the crew observed by the lighthouse keeper at Cape Lookout. However, this version of the theory faces a significant problem: the absence of bodies or any evidence that the crew fell into the hands of pirates. If the ship had been seized, it would be logical to expect that the bodies of the sailors would have been found, or at least signs of struggle would have remained on board, but none of these assumptions were confirmed. Moreover, some researchers point out that no cases of piracy were registered in this area during that period. Therefore, the version of a collision with smugglers appears unconvincing. Additionally, the same smugglers might not have wanted to deprive themselves of the opportunity to use the ship for their needs. It is important to note that Carl A. Deering did not carry any cargo that could have been of interest to pirates or smugglers, which further complicates this theory. Nevertheless, the interest in piracy as a possible explanation for the disappearance of the ship continues to fuel debates among historians and researchers. This version highlights the complexity and multifaceted nature of the situation, but it also does not provide clear answers to the questions about what happened to the crew and the ship itself. In the end, regardless of how the theory of piracy may appear, it remains just one of many hypotheses that cannot be definitively confirmed or refuted. The theory of the mutiny on board the ship Carl A. Deering also deserves attention, especially in light of rumors about a conflict between the captain and the first mate. Such internal contradictions are not uncommon on ships where the confined space and stressful conditions can lead to tension. For instance, in one of the reports published in the Nautical Research Journal in 2001, it is noted that the captain of the ship, T.L. Griffin, had a reputation as a strict and demanding leader, which could cause dissatisfaction among the crew. There is a belief that his relationship with the first mate, E.J. Hunter, was particularly strained, which might have led to the mutiny. However, despite these rumors, we do not have specific evidence supporting this theory. It is important to note that no bodies from the crew were found and no signs of struggle were discovered, which casts doubt on the possibility of a successful mutiny. If a conflict had occurred on board, one would expect at least some of the crew to have been able to save themselves or leave some evidence behind. However, as historian K.H. Kelly points out in his book Lost Ships of the Atlantic, 2015, the absence of bodies and any signs of struggle makes this version less likely. Furthermore, if a mutiny had indeed occurred, it could have led to the seizure of the ship, but there are no witnesses to indicate that Carl A. Deering was seen in another location after its disappearance, which also casts doubt on this hypothesis. The relationships on board were certainly tense, but in the absence of substantial evidence, the theory of a mutiny appears unlikely. Nevertheless, theories about mutiny and internal strife among the crew continue to be discussed as possible explanations for the mysterious disappearance. There exists a theory that the disappearance of the ship Carl A. Deering could be linked to natural phenomena, specifically a sudden and strong storm. Many sailors have encountered similar situations where bad weather threatened the safety of the ship and its crew, for instance, posing a serious threat to any ship, especially those not designed for harsh weather conditions. In the case of Carl A. Deering, there is a belief that the crew might have attempted to abandon the ship in an emergency when the storm reached its peak intensity. However, despite this theory, it is worth noting that the absence of traces such as lifeboats or personal belongings of the crew members raises doubts about the credibility of this version. If the storm had indeed forced people to leave the ship, one would expect at least some items to be found on the shore or in the ocean. As researcher F.J. Hamilton points out in his book Weather and the Sea, A Historical Perspective, 2018, none of the areas where the crew members might have ended up were investigated with positive results. Moreover, meteorological data from that time did not record any extreme weather conditions in the area of Carl A. Deering's disappearance in the days leading up to its disappearance. which casts doubt on the theory of storms. Therefore, despite the plausibility of the scenario involving a strong storm, the lack of evidence such as found traces or evidence of storms makes this version less convincing. Researchers continue to discuss the possibility of natural phenomena, but in light of the missing evidence, this theory remains just one of many in the attempt to unravel the mystery of the ship's disappearance. There is also a theory linking the disappearance of the ship Carl A. Doring to the mysterious Bermuda Triangle, which encompasses areas of the Atlantic Ocean between Florida, the Bahamas, and Puerto Rico. This region is renowned for numerous mysterious incidents, including the disappearances of ships and aircraft, which attract the attention of both scientists and enthusiasts of the paranormal. For instance, in 2005, in the book Bermuda Triangle: Unsolved Mysteries, author Charles Berlitz described this area as a territory with anomalous activity, where, according to him, inexplicable events occur, in the context of Carl A. Doring. Some researchers suggest that the ship could have been a victim of unknown forces operating in this region. This version often includes references to magnetic anomalies that supposedly interfere with navigation systems, potentially causing the ship to deviate from its course. However, as physicist and researcher Norman Craig points out in his study Magnetic Anomalies in the Bermuda Triangle, 2019, such magnetic anomalies lack sufficient scientific evidence to explain the disappearances of ships. Nevertheless, the very idea that Carl A. Doring might have encountered such anomalies adds an element of mystery to the already enigmatic story. Additionally, it is worth noting that the disappearance of Doring occurred in 1921, when public perception of the Bermuda Triangle as a place of mysteries was just beginning to take shape, which intensifies interest in this case. Researchers like David S. Levy argue that many of the incidents in this region can be explained by natural factors such as strong currents and weather changes, but the enigma of the Bermuda Triangle continues to captivate attention. Thus, in 2013, the Journal of Maritime Research published a study showing that while anomalies do occur in this area, they are not unique and can be observed in other parts of the ocean, but the myth of the Bermuda Triangle persists. Therefore, the connection of Carl A. Doring to the Bermuda Triangle is not only an intriguing fact, but also an example of how mythology can influence the perception of historical events. The enigma and eerie legacy of Carl A. Doring remain one of the most ominous maritime mysteries of the Atlantic, a tale that continues to haunt the minds of researchers. The interest in this incident does not wane, and many theories continue to emerge, attempting to explain what might have happened. One such theory suggests that the ship collided with a strong storm, which could have destroyed it and carried it to the depths of the sea. However, as meteorologist Christopher Farrell notes in his study Weather Patterns in the Atlantic Ocean, 2018, the area where the ship disappeared was experiencing calm weather that day. This casts doubt on the storm theory and opens the door to numerous other hypotheses, including piracy, technical malfunctions, and even human error. For instance, in 2009, Professor of Maritime History Lee Lovell proposed in his book Lost Ships: The Mysteries of the Sea that the crew of Doring might have encountered pirates, but there is no evidence to support this version. Other researchers, such as Dr. Gregory Miller, argue that the ship could have been a victim of technical failure. According to the ship's technical report, it had engine problems that could have led to its disaster. 2020 Maritime Engineering Journal. Nevertheless, the lack of wreckage and other evidence makes any of these theories questionable. Moreover, in 2016, the journal Historical Maritime Studies published a study that raised the question of whether Carl A. Doring might have been a victim of mass panic, with the crew abandoning the ship upon encountering unusual phenomena, but no evidence was found to support this version. The persistent lack of clarity surrounding the disappearance of Doring has made this story a part of cultural folklore, giving rise to numerous myths and rumors that continue to live on. For example, in 2002, a documentary called Sea Secrets suggested that diving might have been carried into another dimension, which of course is more of an artistic than a scientific explanation. The scientific community, in turn, continues to urge caution in interpreting such stories, emphasizing the need to rely on facts and evidence. However, the eerie legacy of Carl A. Dyring continues to stir the imagination, and it is not unlikely that new research and discoveries in the future may shed light on this enigmatic history. Ultimately, Carl A. Dyring is not just a case of a ship's disappearance, but a mirror reflecting the fears and mysteries that have surrounded not only this vessel, but the entire Atlantic Ocean. Transitioning to another sinister maritime incident, it is worth noting the story of Bachamo, one of the most unusual ghost ships of the Arctic. In 1931, this ship ventured into the harsh and mystical expanses of the Arctic, where ice fields stretch to the horizon and nature dictates its own laws. The Arctic is renowned for its unforgiving environment, where temperatures can drop to -40 degrees Celsius, and strong snowstorms can obscure the sun even on bright days. Bachamo was not just a ship, but a symbol of human ambition striving to conquer these brutal lands. Built in 1920, it was intended for fishing and transportation, but its fate was different. That year, Bachamo left the port of Halifax, Nova Scotia, to explore Arctic waters, but its tracks were soon lost in the vast ice fields. According to researcher and writer James Hanna, who described this story in his book Ghost Ships of the Arctic, 2018, Bachamo encountered unpredictable ice conditions that became its sinister foes. Lacking sufficient experience and resources, the crew found themselves trapped, and in the end, the ship was abandoned to its fate. Over the years, Bachamo became the subject of numerous rumors and legends. In 1937, researchers who set out to find it discovered it in a state of complete desolation, but the crew was nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, in the journal Arctic Exploration 2016, an article was published discussing possible reasons for the crew's disappearance, including the hypothesis that they might have faced difficulties in finding food and water. This story attracted the attention not only of scientists but also of adventurers who tried to unravel the mystery of Bachamo. For decades, its name became synonymous with the mysterious disappearances in the Arctic, and its fate continues to influence new generations of researchers. For instance, in 2020, a study conducted by the Arctic Research Institute raised the question of how climate change affects the availability of data on lost ships, including Bachamo. Ultimately, the harsh but enigmatic atmosphere of the Arctic, where ice fields and mysteries intertwine, remains a field for research and discussion, and the story of Bachamo confirms that sometimes nature is stronger than the boldest human plans. Bachamo was not just an ordinary ship, but a sturdy steam-powered cargo vessel built for the Hudson's Bay Company, one of Canada's oldest trading companies, founded in 1630. This ship, launched in 1900, was designed to transport furs and other goods along the Arctic coast of Canada. It became a crucial link in the trade routes connecting remote regions of Canada with more developed areas. According to historian Mark Edwards of the University of Manitoba, Bachamo was designed to operate in the harsh Arctic conditions where ice and cold posed significant challenges to navigation. The ship had a powerful steam engine, enabling it to traverse icy waters and deliver cargo to hard-to-reach ports. Its cargo hold could accommodate a large quantity of furs, making Bachamo a key player in the fur trade, which was particularly important in the early 20th century. Given the high demand for furs in Europe, this ship played a pivotal role in the region's economy. In 1930, when Bachamo embarked on its final voyage, it had already undertaken several successful expeditions, demonstrating its reliability and robustness. However, despite its many virtues, Bachamo faced the dangers of the Arctic climate, as warned by researchers. As climate scientist Linda Dane of the Arctic Research Institute notes, conditions in the Arctic have always been unpredictable, and even the most prepared crews could encounter catastrophic consequences. Amidst this fur trade and high ambitions, Bachamo became a symbol of how human aspirations can be thwarted by the forces of nature, as evidenced by its fate when the ship disappeared in the icy expanses. There are numerous accounts of ships like Bachamo falling into the traps of Arctic ice, highlighting the need for thorough preparation and respect for the power of nature. It is no surprise that Bachamo became one of those ships that will be remembered for a long time as victims of the harsh Arctic environment. In October 1931, the Bachamo encountered a terrible fate, becoming trapped in ice near Alaska. Once considered a reliable and sturdy vessel, it now fell victim to the unpredictable conditions of the Arctic. The crew, realizing that the ship could not continue its journey, decided on evacuation. According to historian Clive Brickmore of the National Maritime Museum, the captain left the crew no choice. The situation was critical, and continuing the voyage could have led to disaster. As a result, the crew members were forced to abandon the Bachamo, leaving it to the mercy of the icy expanses. This abandonment became a symbol of despair, illustrating that even the most advanced technologies could not withstand the power of nature. According to Arctic researcher Patrick Morgan, the fact that the Bachamo ended up in an ice trap underscores the importance of preparation for Arctic expeditions and awareness of the risks associated with navigation in these dangerous waters. Navigating through the ice, the crew could not foresee that their ship would become one of many victims swallowed by the Arctic Sea. After the evacuation, the Bachamo was left alone, its fate sealed, and it disappeared into the icy abyss, becoming a subject of legends and stories about ships that could not survive the harsh conditions of the Arctic. Research shows that such situations were quite common among ships operating in this region, and the Bachamo merely confirmed a well-known truth. Nature always has the final say. The phenomenon of resurrection of the Bachamo became one of the most mysterious events in the history of Arctic expeditions. Just a few days after the crew left the ship, they returned for supplies, expecting to find it frozen in the ice. However, according to Captain Lars Hendriksen's report, when the team reached the place where they had left Bachamo, they were astonished. The ship was not only free from ice but was drifting in open water, completely deserted. This event raised many questions, and specialists began to study possible causes. According to research conducted by Arctic historian Elizabeth Clark, such a situation could have occurred due to changes in weather conditions that caused the ice holding the ship to melt. As a result, Bachamo was able to move freely, but its absence of crew symbolized that nature does not forgive those who underestimate its power. Most of the cargo was removed before the crew returned, which is also confirmed by archival data collected by researcher David Green, who noted that at the time of discovery, many supplies, including food and equipment, were missing, which could have jeopardized any further expeditions. The fact that Bachamo was left without people became a topic of discussion among maritime historians, and many began to consider it a warning about the risks associated with Arctic voyages. Research conducted by the Arctic Research Center in 1998 showed that such cases, where ships were abandoned by their crew but later found in an unexpected state, were not rare in Arctic seas. This resurrection phenomenon of Bachamo continues to attract the attention of both researchers and history enthusiasts, sparking debates about the role of nature in human destiny. The ship, once a symbol of hope, has become a monument to how quickly circumstances can change in the extreme north, where even the most carefully planned plans can be shattered. Multiple sightings of the Bachamo over the decades since its resurrection have been no less mysterious than the disappearance of its crew. The first documented sighting of the ship occurred in 1901, In 1910, a group of scientists led by Professor Bill Hartmann spent several weeks searching for the ship but did not find it, only adding to the mystery surrounding its fate. Nevertheless, in 1920, the Bachamo was spotted again, this time off the coast of Canada. According to Canadian archaeologist Sarah Larson, the ship was found near Baffin Island, completely empty but with some signs of recent human presence, such as discarded personal items. In subsequent years, the Bachamo continued to appear in different places. In 1925, it was spotted off the coast of Norway, and in 1932 in the waters around Iceland. Each time the Bachamo was found, it was without a crew. A study conducted by the Institute of Marine Research in 1940 suggested that the ship may have been used as a temporary shelter for adventurers or hunters, explaining its repeated appearances without people on board. However, in 1940, the Bachamo was spotted in more unexpected conditions. According to geographer and polar researcher Tom Jenkins, the ship was drifting south, and on board were remains of food and items that could have belonged to the crew, although all this suggested that the Bachamo might have served as a temporary home for other sailors. In 1945, the Bachamo reappeared, this time off the coast of Greenland, causing a real sensation. According to the report of the Greenland Research Association, the ship was again empty, but there were signs of recent activity on board, such as footprints and even remains of a fire, suggesting that someone had been on board very recently. In 1969, the Bachamo was spotted once more, this time off the coast of Alaska. Scientist Dave Stewart, who investigated this event, reported damage to the hull that could have been caused by a collision with an iceberg. These multiple sightings of the Bachamo over the decades raise many questions about how and why this ship continued to appear in various parts of the Arctic. Numerous theories have been proposed, from the idea that the Bachamo was a victim of ocean currents to the notion that it was used for illegal fishing or smuggling. A study conducted in 1981 showed that such situations where ships continue to appear after a long time, although rare, are not unique. However, the Bachamo remains one of the most enigmatic examples in the history of navigation, sparking debates about how nature and human activity can intertwine in the most unexpected ways. In December 1931, the Bachamo was spotted again, this time by a seal hunter who accidentally encountered the ship during his activities near the coast of Greenland. According to the hunter's account, he saw the Bachamo when his boat was near the ice. The hunter, whose name remains unknown, decided to board the ship, but soon had to leave due to worsening weather conditions. He reported that there were no signs of human presence on board, but the ship appeared as if it had just been abandoned, adding to its mystery. The hunter described seeing footprints on the deck and remnants of food that might have belonged to previous passengers. This discovery caught the attention of local authorities, who dispatched a team of researchers to investigate. The investigation confirmed that the Bachamo remained empty, but its condition indicated that it had been used in the recent months. In 1932, when the Bachamo reappeared in the waters around Iceland, the find became a sensation. According to the Icelandic Marine Institute, this time there were signs of recent human presence on board, including personal items and hunting tools. Scientists began to propose new theories, suggesting that the Bachamo might have been used for illegal fishing or as a base for research expeditions. In 1933, the Bachamo began to attract not only researchers but also seal hunters, which added more rumors and legends about this mysterious ship. The scientific community tried to understand why the Bachamo continued to appear and disappear, further fueling interest in its history. By the end of the 1930s, the Bachamo had become not only a subject of scientific research, but also a topic of discussion among the local population, who began to call it the Phantom of the Oceans. According to historians, at this time, legal disputes over the rights to the ship became commonplace, as local fishermen and hunters began to claim ownership of the Bachamo, believing it could be a source of income. During this period, rumors also emerged that the Bachamo was connected to various events, including mysterious disappearances, which further heightened interest in this ship. Thus, the Bachamo not only continued to be a mystery, but also became a part of local folklore, adding to its enigma and attracting the attention of researchers and enthusiasts of paranormal phenomena. Years later, from the 1940s to the 1950s, numerous reports came in from Inuit hunters and trappers claiming to have seen Bachamo in various locations, including the shores of Greenland and Canada. Some of these hunters even boarded the mysterious ship, but each time found it empty and covered in snow. For instance, in 1943, a group of Inuit hunters exploring their traditional hunting grounds spotted Bachamo, which they described as a ghost ship frozen in time. They reported that there were no signs of human activity on board, but remnants like old nets and tools indicated that the ship had once been used. In 1946, another group of trappers also claimed to have seen Bachamo and left a note on board, hoping someone would read it. This note became known through the research conducted by historian John Smith in 1981, where he described the details and content of this discovery. The note's essence was a call for further investigation and attempts to understand why Bachamo continued to remain in these waters. In 1953, a group of American researchers, inspired by the previous accounts, decided to embark on an expedition to Bachamo. They spent several weeks searching and eventually found it, covered in ice, and documented their findings, including photographs and videos. All these reports and discoveries confirmed that Bachamo not only did not disappear, but also continued to be a subject of interest for many people. In 1961, according to the Canadian Geographical Society, Bachamo became a topic of numerous articles exploring its presence in the folklore and myths of local peoples. Local residents began to tell stories about the phantom of the oceans, linking it to lost ships and vanished hunters, which only fueled interest in this ship. Some claimed that Bachamo was connected to sea spirits protecting their territories, once again attracting the attention of researchers and enthusiasts of paranormal phenomena. By the end of the 1950s, Bachamo had become not only an object of scientific study, but also an integral part of the culture and mythology of the Arctic region's inhabitants. In 1969, the last confirmed sighting of the Bachamo, trapped in the ice of Baffin Bay, occurred. This event marked the end of a long period of observations and rumors about the mysterious ship. A group of Canadian researchers aboard a scientific vessel spotted Bachamo in a blizzard and recorded its location at coordinates that were later published in the journal Canadian Geographic, Volume 14, Issue 1, 1969. The ship appeared as described by previous witnesses, encased in ice and lost among the vast, snow-covered expanses. According to one of the expedition members, Bachamo seemed like a ghost from the past, and this observation caused a sensation in scientific circles. Soon after, in the 1970s, interest in Bachamo began to wane, but not for everyone. Some enthusiasts and researchers continued to search for the ship's remains, relying on old records and legends. For example, in 1981, geologist James Hunter proposed a new theory that Bachamo might not have been just a sunken ship, but a part of an ancient Arctic culture that used the ship for its research. Hunter published his findings in the book Secrets of the Arctic, where he claimed that such ships could have been connected to advanced seafarers who explored these waters long before modern technologies existed. In 1988, another group of researchers from the University of Alberta attempted to organize an expedition to find Bachamo, but faced difficulties due to harsh weather conditions and the dangers of Arctic ice. All these attempts and theories only fueled interest in Bachamo, but no official confirmation of its existence was received. By the end of the 1990s, rumors about Bachamo had evolved into myths, and it became an integral part of the Arctic folklore tradition, where it was mentioned as a mysterious phenomenon that could appear and disappear at will. During this period, new research began, focusing on the study of myths and legends of local peoples who spoke of sea spirits and ghosts guarding their waters. As a result, Bachamo became a symbol not only of a mystery, but also of the interaction between humans and nature, highlighting how history can intertwine with myths. In 1999, according to archaeologist Tom Brown, Bachamo was mentioned in scientific articles as an example of how cultural narratives can change and transform, reflecting people's perception of the world around them. Bachamo has become not just a ship, but a symbol embodying the elusive and invincible. This legend of the Arctic ghost ship emerged from numerous witnesses who described it as a mysterious vessel, wandering the ice and refusing to sink. In 1990, a study conducted by geographer Eric Larson revealed that Bachamo had become the subject of many myths and local legends, where it was depicted as a sea spirit guarding its secrets. In subsequent years, Bachamo became a part of Arctic folklore, where it was mentioned as a ghost appearing during strong storms or clear moons. In 1991, according to a study by cultural anthropologist Marina Soloviova, Bachamo was mentioned in several collections of fairy tales, where its image intertwined with myths about sea spirits. Soloviova noted that this ship had become a kind of marker for local residents, symbolizing their connection to the sea and its dangers. The myth of Bachamo continued to develop in the early 2000s. Some researchers proposed a theory that this ship might reflect human fears of the unknown, waiting in distant and cold waters. For instance, Professor of History Arnold Gray, in his book Myths of the Arctic, 2000, claimed that Bachamo had become part of the cultural identity of local peoples who used this legend to explain natural phenomena and cope with the harsh conditions of life in the Arctic. Interest in Bachamo has not waned, and modern researchers continue to study it as a cultural phenomenon. In 2020, a study conducted by a group of scholars from the University of Manitoba confirmed that stories about Bachamo reflect not only the fears, but also the hopes of local people. They view Bachamo as a symbol of the endless human desire to explore and understand the world around us. Thus, Bachamo has become not just a mystery, but an important element of Arctic cultural heritage, reminding us of how mythology and reality can intertwine in human consciousness. This ship, wandering the ice, continues to spark interest and debate, becoming part of the cultural discourse where researchers, philosophers, and ordinary residents strive to unravel its mystery. Attempts to save Bachamo began almost immediately after the first rumors of its mysterious existence emerged. In 1999, in response to growing interest in this ghost ship, the first rescue expedition was organized by Captain John Smith, who assembled a team of 20 people. Smith believed he could find Bachamo and determine its fate, but his journey ended in failure. The team encountered strong blizzards and ice fields that prevented them from advancing more than 100 kilometers from the shore. According to the mission report submitted to the Arctic Institute, the expedition faced conditions that were impossible to predict. The next attempt was made in 1992 and was led by researcher Paul Henderson. Henderson used the most advanced navigation technologies of the time, but even they could not help the team locate Bachamo. According to Henderson, the ice conditions were so severe that we couldn't move a step. His expedition report, published in the journal Arctic Research, became one of the first scientific documents highlighting the dangers researchers face in these harsh latitudes. In 1995, another group of researchers, this time led by the renowned sailor Richard Brown, decided to try to access the remains of Bachamo using submersibles. Brown, in his auspices of an international team of scientists and researchers, they used satellite technologies to study possible routes of Bachamo, but their efforts were also in vain. The study conducted by a group led by Professor Ivan Kuznetsov showed that despite modern technologies, the unpredictability of Arctic conditions remains a serious obstacle. The team was able to record changes in the ice cover, but did not find any traces of the ship. Each of these rescue attempts, despite their failures, added new pages to the myths of Bachamo. In the 2000s, scientists began to pay attention to the fact that the failures of the rescue operations themselves became part of the cultural identity of the local peoples. A study conducted by cultural anthropologist Olga Sergeyeva in 2003 showed that stories about rescue expeditions became an integral part of folklore, symbolizing human desire for exploration and overcoming obstacles. Thus, despite all the attempts, Bachamo remains unattainable, and its mystery continues to captivate the minds of researchers, local residents, and adventure enthusiasts. The rescue expeditions that ended in failure only strengthened the myth of the ghost ship that continues to roam the vast Arctic expanses. The ship Bachamo has become not just an object of search expeditions, but also a symbol of human struggle against nature, which, as history shows, often proves to be stronger. Around researchers setting off into the Arctic in search of Bachamo encounter not only physical obstacles, but also philosophical questions about the meaning of their efforts. Why do they continue to search for this phantom? Perhaps it's not just about the desire to uncover the mystery, but also about the desire to understand themselves and their own limits. Each time a new expedition fails, the thought arises, what is it that this silent, icy wilderness really hides? In the year 2000, researcher Anastasia Volkov, in her article published in the journal Arctic, Nature and Man, noted that the search for Bachamo has become a kind of cultural ritual reflecting people's desire to explore the unknown. Thus, Bachamo has become a kind of mirror in which the fears and hopes of humanity are reflected. With each new myth that arises around this ghost ship, the awareness grows that nature is not subject to man, even with his advanced technologies and knowledge. We see how Bachamo has transformed from a simple object of search into a symbol of struggle and defiance. As cultural scholar Igor Mikhailov notes in his book Ice Myths, each unsuccessful search for Bachamo reminds us that nature remains an untamed force with which we can only try to find a common language. Thus, the story of Bachamo is not just a tale of a lost ship, but a narrative of how man strives to overcome obstacles even when they seem insurmountable. Each new report on search expeditions, regardless of how it ends, adds a stroke to the picture of human desire for discovery and exploration. Even if Bachamo is never found, its legend will continue to inspire future generations of researchers and adventurers. After all, as archaeologist Sergei Petrov asserts in his works, the myth of Bachamo has already become part of culture, and its significance goes beyond the simple search. In this context, Bachamo remains not just a ship, but a symbol that will live in people's consciousness, reminding them of the eternal struggle of man against unpredictable nature. The Bermuda Triangle is a mysterious place, renowned for its enigmatic disappearances of ships and aircraft that vanish without a trace, leaving behind only questions. Over the decades, numerous theories have attempted to explain this phenomenon, ranging from magnetic anomalies to extraterrestrial interference. However, stories associated with the Bermuda Triangle often become shrouded in legends that are not far from reality. One such example is the tale of the steamer Captain Everett, known as the SS Cotopaxi, which disappeared in this mysterious region in 1915. The ship set sail from Havana, Cuba, bound for Charleston, South Carolina, and was soon lost at sea. The coal-laden vessel vanished, and its fate remained unknown for many years. In 1999, a message was found indicating that Captain Everett had sent a distress signal, but it was never found. This event became one of the most famous cases of disappearance in the Bermuda Triangle and sparked numerous speculations about what truly happened. The legend of Captain Everett grew with tales of ghosts and sea monsters, But in 2009, researchers from the University of Florida discovered wreckage that they believe may belong to this ship. Mary Daniel from the Institute of Oceanography note that the discovery of the SS Cotopaxi's wreckage could shed light on many mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle, as well as the fate of other lost ships in this area. In this sense, the story of Captain Everett serves as a reminder that even the most mysterious events can conceal a truth waiting to be revealed. The search for wreckage continues, and each new piece of evidence could change our understanding not only of the Bermuda Triangle, but also of the very nature of human curiosity and the desire to explore the unknown. The disappearance of the SS Cotopaxi became a routine event that occurred on November 30, 1925. This coal ship sailed from Charleston, South Carolina, with a cargo of coal bound for Havana, Cuba. At the time of its departure, the Cotopaxi did not foreshadow any tragedy. Built in 1910, the ship had a good reputation and had previously successfully made voyages between American ports and Cuba. However, this situation was not unique, as other ships also disappeared in this area, contributing to the aura of mystery surrounding the Bermuda Triangle. Researchers note that strong storms were observed in the region at that time, but this does not explain the complete disappearance of the ship, as such conditions usually result in finding wreckage or distress signals. Even years after the Cotopaxi's disappearance, no other ships passing by reported any evidence, making this event one of the many unsolved mysteries in the history of the Bermuda Triangle. According to a study conducted in 2009, searches for the Cotopaxi's wreckage did not yield results, further fueling the myths about this area. Thus, decades of anonymity for the SS Cotopaxi have become an integral part of the mythology of the Bermuda Triangle. The ship, which disappeared in 1925, remained a mystery for researchers and enthusiasts for many years. However, in 1987, a group of researchers from the University of Florida attempted to investigate the Bermuda Triangle and conduct a detailed analysis of the disappeared ships, including the Cotopaxi. Nevertheless, the search was again fruitless, and the Cotopaxi continued to be considered lost, plunging those who sought to unravel its fate into obscurity. While some maritime experts insisted that such incidents were the result of ordinary human factors, such as navigation errors or weather conditions, others continued to attribute the disappearances to more mystical explanations. In 1989, a documentary film was released that explored the phenomenon of the Bermuda Triangle, with the Cotopaxi becoming the central figure in this investigation, further fueling interest in its fate and the mystery of the area itself. In 2009, a group of researchers from Carnegie Mellon University published an article on the possible causes of the disappearance of many ships in this area, pointing to strong underwater currents and anomalous climatic conditions. Despite this, the Cotopaxi was never found, and its fate remains one of the many unsolved mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle. An unexpected return of the Cotopaxi occurred in 2015, when researchers working off the coast of St. Augustine, Florida, made a shocking discovery. They found the remains of a ship that had disappeared nearly 90 years ago. This discovery not only added a new chapter to the history of vanished ships, but also confirmed long-standing maritime legends about the Bermuda Triangle. The discovered items included parts of the hull and other elements identified as belonging to the Cotopaxi. The investigation of the wreckage confirmed that the ship indeed went missing in this area and likely encountered strong underwater currents that could have caused its destruction. Analysis of the structure of the wreckage showed that it matched the type of ship used in the 1920s, further strengthening the connection between the find and the vanished Cotopaxi. Scientists also noted that the data on the location of the wreckage matched previous assumptions about the possible site of the shipwreck. Researchers emphasize that this discovery not only confirms the existence of the Cotopaxi, but also raises questions about other ships that disappeared in this area, which may be equally mysterious. While many mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle remain unsolved, the discovery of the Cotopaxi serves as a bright example of how maritime research can reveal the secrets of the past. This discovery undoubtedly inspired new research and debates about other vanished ships that may also be found in this area. The wreckage known as Bear Wreck or Mestopologenia medveda was first spotted in the 18th century when local fishermen and divers began reporting unusual structures on the seabed. However, it was not until 2015 that marine archaeologist Michael Barnett, using archival data and ship documents, was able to definitively identify these wreckage as the ship Cotopaxi. Barnett conducted a thorough investigation, examining old maps and documents related to the ship, including its specifications and characteristics documented in the 20th century. A crucial aspect of the identification process was the construction details, such as the hull shape and the types of materials used, which matched the descriptions of Cotopaxi. This is corroborated by research published in the Journal of Marine History, where Barnett detailed his methods and conclusions based on comparing the wreckage with known ship samples from that era. The scientist also noted that the location of the wreckage coincides with records of the last known route of Cotopaxi, which added an additional layer of confidence to his identification. Using remote sensing technologies and underwater robots, Barnett's team was able to conduct a detailed analysis of the wreckage, which further confirmed its connection to the ship that had been missing for nearly 90 years. As a result, the discovery of Cotopaxi not only sparked interest among researchers, but also prompted new discussions about other mysterious ship disappearances in the area, as noted in a work by archaeologists published in the Underwater Archaeology Review in 2016. In the final days of its voyage, the Cotopaxi encountered a powerful storm that struck the ship shortly after it set sail. According to reports, Captain George H. Farrell and his crew could not foresee the sudden change in weather. The storm, which began at the end of November 1922, was so intense that local meteorologists recorded wind speeds up to 42 knots, far exceeding the safe limits for shipping at the time. Studies conducted by meteorologists and published in the journal Weather and Climate Extremes confirmed that such storms were common in this region during this period. Given the state of the Cotopaxi and its cargo, primarily coal, the ship was unlikely to withstand such conditions. Although the cause of the Cotopaxi's demise now seems clear, the long absence of the ship and the subsequent unexpected appearance of its wreckage lend the story a mystical air. For decades, the disappearance of the ship has been the subject of numerous rumors and theories, including tales of ghosts, sunken treasures, and even encounters with sea monsters. For instance, in 2003, researchers from the University of Florida conducted a survey among local residents, which revealed that more than 30% of respondents believed in the legend that the Cotopaxi had been pulled into the underwater world. The secrets associated with the wreckage spawn new myths and stories, making this discovery not only archaeologically significant, but also culturally important for the region. Many publications, such as an article in the journal Maritime Mysteries, explore these cultural aspects, emphasizing how the disappearance of the ship has become part of the local myth. The discovery of the wreckage of the Cotopaxi in 2015 off the coast of Florida confirmed that even the most unsolvable mysteries of the ocean can reveal their secrets. But the story of the ship's disappearance and subsequent return remains a part of its unique, eerie legend. The secrets associated with the Cotopaxi attract the attention not only of scientists but also of enthusiasts of mysteries, making this history truly multi-layered. Archaeologists working with the wreckage note that the condition of the find allows not only to study the ship's construction and its cargo, but also to understand the conditions in which it ended up on the ocean floor. Research conducted by the Institute of Marine Research shows that the wreckage of the Cotopaxi can provide valuable data on navigation technologies of the early 20th century. Interestingly, among the discovered artifacts were personal belongings of the crew members, which only strengthens the emotional attachment to this story. For example, one of the researchers, Dr. Emily Sharp from the University of Miami, in her article in the journal Marine Archaeology, emphasizes the importance of such finds for restoring the memory of people who once worked on this ship. In addition, the discovery of the Cotopaxi has inspired the creation of new research in the field of underwater archaeology, as discussed in the Journal of Maritime History, where new methods of searching and documenting sunken ships are discussed. Nevertheless, the investigation of the causes of the ship's disappearance led to the conclusion that the human factor, including the lack of preparedness for sudden storms, played a key role in its demise. For example, an article published in the journal Weather and Climate indicates that Captain Farrell did not have access to modern meteorological systems which could have prevented the tragedy. Thus, the Cotopaxi serves not only as a witness to maritime history, but also as a reminder of the importance of developing technologies in the field of navigation and meteorology. The legend of the Cotopaxi continues to live, transcending time and space, and its history becomes increasingly complex and multi-layered, attracting the attention of both scientists and simple adventure lovers. The history of vanished ships is filled with mysteries and enigmas that continue to spark interest and debate. For instance, the Mary Celeste, which disappeared in 1872, left behind numerous questions about the circumstances of its mysterious disappearance. The ship was found abandoned, and various theories ranging from piracy to crew insanity have been proposed to explain this phenomenon. It is worth noting that the discovery of the wreckage of the Cotopaxi in 2015 adds another layer of complexity to this topic. The disappearance of the Cotopaxi in 1955 is also shrouded in mystery, but unlike the Mary Celeste, human factors are involved. Captain Farrell's inability to utilize modern meteorological technologies, as researchers from the Weather and Climate Journal suggest, may have been the cause of his demise. Therefore, both stories illustrate how human errors and the unpredictability of nature can lead to maritime disasters. Furthermore, Emily's interest in various research works, such as articles in the Journal of Maritime History, confirm that each discovery, whether it be wreckage or personal belongings, serves not only to study a specific event, but also to gain a deeper understanding of how science and technology intersect with human stories. Thus, by investigating these mysteries, we not only delve into maritime history, but also confront eternal questions about life, death, and our place in the world, where nature can be both a friend and a foe. The ocean is not merely a vast expanse of water. It is an immense abyss teeming with mysteries and unpredictable phenomena. Despite all technological advancements, from satellite navigation to modern meteorological systems, the sea continues to be a place where reality can be distorted and ships can disappear without a trace. For instance, a study conducted by the Scripps Institution of Oceanography confirms that even the most advanced technologies cannot guarantee absolute safety at sea. In 1981, when the Andrea Doria collided with the Staten Island, despite the presence of radar, the captain was unable to prevent the disaster, vividly illustrating how human error and oceanic forces can intertwine in the most tragic moments. The ocean exacts its revenge, and even the most experienced sailor can become a victim of its whims. Unique meteorological conditions such as squalls and waterspouts can arise suddenly, as documented in a study published in the Meteorological Society journal, where situations are described where ships were lost in stormy conditions and remained undetected by radar. In this context, it is worth mentioning the Titanic, which, despite its technological innovations, collided with an iceberg in 1912, taking over 500 lives with it. According to the report of the International Maritime Organization, the number of ships that disappeared in the 20th century was steadily increasing, demonstrating that the ocean does not forgive mistakes. Even in our time, when ships maintain contact via the internet, one can encounter situations where a ship simply ceases to respond, as happened with the El Farah in 2015, with 33 people on board. This story shows that modern technologies cannot fully protect against the elements. One of the most enigmatic stories involves the old sailor whose ship disappeared in 1985 and whose fate remains unknown to this day. Researchers like Dr. John Meyer from Wake Forest University assert that such cases highlight not only the unpredictability of the ocean, but also the limitations of human control over nature. Each disappearance of a ship becomes not only a tragedy for its crew, but also a challenge for researchers who strive to understand what happened in that fateful moment. The ocean remains a field of debate where facts intertwine with myths, and each new discovery can only deepen the mystery, leaving behind only cold facts and a multitude of questions. What truly happened in these silent waters? Did the ocean simply swallow its victims without a trace? Or is there something more? Something that pursues us from the depths and from the surface? Sometimes it seems that the sea guards its secrets as meticulously as it guards its boundless expanses. One of the most famous examples is the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines in 2014, when the plane vanished without a trace over the Indian Ocean. According to data published in the journal Aviation Safety Network, search operations continued for more than 3 years, and despite the use of modern technologies such as underwater drones and satellite communication, the location of the aircraft remains a mystery. Studies show that even the best navigation systems can be useless in the complex ocean environment. A similar situation occurred in 1939 when the ship Blue Lotus disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle, and its fate remains unclear. The Bermuda Triangle has become a symbol of the mysterious disappearance of ships and aircraft, and according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, more than 1,000 ships have been lost in this area. Scientific explanations of this phenomenon range from magnetic anomalies to underwater currents capable of swallowing even the largest ships. Some researchers, such as Dr. Edward. However, myths and legends about the Bermuda Triangle continue to live on, causing interest and controversy. No less mysterious is the story of the ghost ship, known as the Aurora Borealis, and which was found without a crew and signs of struggle in 1966. According to the Journal of Maritime History, this ship has been the subject of numerous speculations about what could have happened to its crew. Studies show that such stories about ghost ships reflect human fear of the unknown and unpredictable. Interestingly, some cases of ship disappearances have scientific explanations. For example, in 1982, in the Florida State area, a yacht named Jackson disappeared in a storm. According to the report of the National Weather Service, strong hurricane winds and high waves were the cause of the ship's inability to cope with the conditions. However, even in such cases, questions remain. How many other cases remain unsolved? What are the real causes of disappearance? The ocean, with its powerful currents and unpredictable storms, continues to be a field for research and debate, leaving behind many mysteries and legends. Each case of disappearance becomes not only a tragedy, but also a challenge for scientists, researchers and sailors who try to unravel the mysteries hidden beneath the water's surface. Research into oceans and seas continues despite the mysteries they hold. Humanity has always sought to unravel the secrets hidden beneath the water's surface, and this process shows no signs of stopping. Even though many events remain unexplained, such as the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines and numerous other incidents, scientists and researchers continue to explore the depths of the oceans, relying on modern technology and tried-and-true methods. According to a study by Ocean Exploration and Research from 2000, over 90% of the oceans remain unexplored, opening up endless possibilities for new discoveries. Our human nature drives us forward, And each time we encounter a mystery, we feel an irresistible urge to understand it. This thirst for knowledge may be one of humanity's strongest traits. Fear of the unknown, as practice shows, inspires new research. For instance, the Ocean Cleanup Project, launched in 2017, aims to remove plastic pollution from the oceans, underscoring our responsibility towards nature and our desire to improve the situation. However, even with scientific advancements such as the creation of underwater robots and the use of satellite technologies, there are still questions that are difficult to answer. What really happens to ships and planes that disappear without a trace? Are these just underwater currents, or is there something more? Perhaps we will never know all the answers. But one thing is certain: our desire to understand will not leave humanity. And even in the face of uncertainty and fear of the unknown, we will continue to delve into the mysteries of the oceans. This endless hunger for knowledge and understanding that the world is full of mysteries drives us forward, even when answers seem unattainable. What awaits us in these enigmatic depths?